I'm Stefan Baumann. I would like to invite you on a special journey to discover the splendor, encounter the grandeur, feel the excitement. Come along with me as we experience the thrill of painting outdoors. A 3-day journey that will change your art forever. In one of America's most stunning locations, Mount Shasta. Everything you need to know is on our website, www.stefanbaumann.com. So we're going to carry on telling a story right here. So do you understand about central focal points? You've been watching. You're learning. You're watching my videos.
Yes.
One by one, slowly, every day, just a little more. And just think, I'm going to have podcasts out so you can download them into your phone and listen to them in your car. And then you get home and you listen to me there. And then you watch my TV show late at night on PBS before you go to sleep. No wonder a lot of husbands think I'm the other man in their life. Okay, so yeah, so this is right in the central focal point, right where we want it. It's within the middle third, beautifully done. Beautiful brush strokes.
Oh, nice.
Very nicely painted.
I haven't gone for wine before I started that.
Wine helps. Wine helps, but every one of your brush strokes looks independent. Were you paying attention to your brush strokes while you were painting it?
Very much.
Every one a different direction, a little different weight, a little different length.
I'm trying to hold the end of the brush instead of getting up close.
Yeah, hold the brush towards the end and kind of use your arm as you're painting it.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That's fun, whatever.
You know, if the glass is half full, the wine bottle should be half full.
The wine bottle was so dark you couldn't see that.
Mhm.
I thought about putting it in anyway.
You do.
But, yeah.
That's part of telling your story. And also maybe the cork.
Oh.
So this kind of looks like you just opened up, or you haven't opened it up yet, but you got a fresh wine. More wine. More wine. Okay, so this reads nice, nice soft edges, but I think the edges of the bottle could have been softened too. Remember, the central focal point has the hardest edge. Then everything else it fades in comparison. So some people say, how do you work with edges? The further away from the center focal point, the blurrier the edges should be. So we get out of here, you have some hard edges popping out. And that gets us to kind of pull over there, and I don't necessarily think you want the person to be over there.
Yeah.
So you want your central focal point, and then that would be the hardest edge up in here, probably even on the bottle because it's in the zone. Usually your central focal point area is about the size of an egg. I used to say about the size of a silver dollar, but nowadays people don't know what a silver dollar looks like anymore. And the thing is, I used to mean the old Eisenhower dollars. Nowadays people think like the small quarter size, yeah. There's a lot of contrast between that orange and that blue. You know, we're dealing with complementary colors here, and it's like, you know. Is there any reason why you chose orange on this, or a blue background?
Well, the thing was, but I did chose blue deliberately because it was the contrast of the orange.
Okay. So I'm going to mention something. Be sure you answered me truthfully.
Uh-oh.
When you painted this, was your background blue?
Yes.
How did you make it blue?
I just put an old painting I had that had blue in it. It was mostly blue, and I just stuck it in the back.
Very good. So when you set up a still life and let's say you have terracotta and it's orange, and the background is white, let's say, and you say, oh, this is a good time to do my complementary color. I'm going to take all the white background and paint it blue. Not a good idea. Remember, we paint what we see. And in order to do that, you paint exactly what you see. So if your background is going to be a blue background, you have to put a sheet of blue something behind there. Otherwise, the colors get funky. A lot of times I see people, they do portraits and beautiful colors, and then they stick a green background because they want the person to look like they're outdoors. All that green would change first the colors that you're using. It changes the colors just within your eyes. Your eyes starts to mix up all that color. And furthermore, if you had a green background, green would reflect back into the face. Now, artists who've been painting for a long time know how to compensate for that, but just always paint what you see. So if you're going to paint a portrait, make sure you put a sheet of green paper behind them if that's what you want it to do. Or take them outside. But you always want to paint what you see. Your best success is not to change the model. And I have students that spend an entire week setting up their setup before they start painting, and then it's real simple for them. They can paint it in a few hours. But once you start changing things, if you're painting this and said, oh, I want to do a blue vase, you're going to fail unless you've had a lot of practice. So I'd like to see a little more blue reflection in that just to kind of balance it out. Actually, adding some blue to the orange, you'll get some gray instead of some of this really high chroma orange. Because you could see the whole painting kind of, here's your central focal point, but we're kind of being drawn over to that side. I like all the brushes. I would like to have seen a few smaller brushes. Just to kind of get a little bit more eye magnets effect. I would like to have seen tall brushes here and then smaller brushes down here to help get the energy to go around. And the thing is, there's always something that people miss. That's my job security. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want the tall brushes on the left so they would come down pointing to your focal point?
Well, we always go from left to right. And the thing is, what we're doing here is that we're aware here. And then with the central focal point, you usually have one dominant central focal point, and then two central focal points that are not so dominant. And usually those should be in a triangle.
But you said, excuse me, have the high
Don't
brushes.
ever quote anything I've ever said. I take no responsibility.
You just said have the brushes start high by the bottles and come down to the left.
Mm-hmm.
So you get this circle.
Well, the thing is, what happens is that we come from a painting from left to right.
Yeah, but my point was, why wouldn't the tall ones be on the left, coming down into the focal point?
Kind of like this way?
Yeah.
Because, okay, so just watch the movement. This is eye magnets.
Mm-hmm.
Eye magnets are really crucial. In fact, I think we'll probably do that. Because it's always like, okay, you have this, you have that. You know, there's things, there's like 5 things. One of my students said, oh, I got you. You only know 5 things, and then you just repeat it. But those 5 things are like really important. They're like they're a part of my 12. I actually have 12. You master 12, you're good. And I have a video on the 12, so you can actually write them down. But so eye magnets is eye movement, how the eye travels through the painting. And I don't know why I call them eye magnets, because one student told me 30 years ago that's what she called them. I said, well, that sounds fine. So we come from the painting from left to right.
Mm-hmm.
We want the viewer to just, bang, find that out. Then what we want is a distraction, because when we're actually staring at something, if I'm staring at you, and I stare at you, and I keep talking to you this way, and I stare at you, before long you're going to wonder, why the hell is he staring at me? Even if you're having a conversation. So usually what happens is that when you are engaging in a conversation, you look at somebody and then you look away. You say something and the person's usually in thought, they look away. You don't just stare at somebody. So having a good eye magnet pulls us in. It's like, oh yes, I know you, engage in a conversation, but I'm going to drift off. Now, if I'm looking at you and we're engaging in a conversation, I'm paying attention to Dottie over here. Yeah, she's in my corner here. And I kind of look over to see if she's falling asleep, going, make a point.
Wake up, Dottie.
Wake up, Dottie. So I'm looking at you, I dart over there, and then I come back and look at you. If all of a sudden Dottie starts taking out a knife, I might be. And all of a sudden she starts slashing the person next to her, I'd start stopping to look at you and I'd start looking at her, right? So you got to make sure that when you're doing the other focal points, that they're less, so we always come back. But you have to have something there. So here's the central focal point, it's really bright. What she's actually kind of missing is a secondary focal point. And I would actually make that secondary focal point up there. Just because it's like a triangle. Usually I'm always after a triangle of something.
Okay, I kind of get what you just explained. I kind of get it.
Yeah, so I would, we always kind of come in and start, see, even this eye magnet in here is brilliant. Because you're kind of coming in from left to right. That's usually how we look at things, from left to right, because that's how we read. In Asia, they read up and down. Okay, and their artwork is scrolls. And art from other cultures, like Arabia, they read backwards. And their art actually does that. For us, it feels a little awkward, but for them, their artwork feels a different way. It just depends on your culture and where you're brought up. So what's your culture, left to right? The right side of the canvas is always the most dominant. So that's where you'd want it. And if the light's coming from the left to right, you want your central focal point to be on the right side of the canvas. So this line brings us in, boom. That's one of the most dynamic lines that are in here. Boom, we're here. Secondary focal point somewhere up there. We would be distracted by that, go up here. The line would take us up. And then what we'd want to do is try to come back down. Now she has the line going across so that these brushes lead you right out. Okay? So what we want to do is bring the brushes down. And then maybe pull something over here to bring the viewer back in again.
Okay.
So she has a line going in, but really needs something to pull in. That's why I suggested to bring the brushes down.
I got that last explanation.
Okay, so, but good. Eye magnets are crucial. The more you do them, the more successful your painting is. Now, one of the things that I like to do in my paintings, oftentimes, is that I'll choose that central focal point first. I'll say, there it is. And usually I'll find it on a mean. So I'll cut my canvases up to the golden mean. Have you seen that video yet? There's a video on golden mean in my collection. So you'll know what that is. Okay, so you find out where the golden mean is, and then you make your center focal point on that. And then what I do is I start a spiral outwards. And everything starts to fall into a spiral. So this falls into a spiral, that falls. And I'd actually have something down here to catch it. So the bottom of the vase here, down. And probably I would have down here the cork, which we could have pointing back up to here. And you can slowly spiral your viewer in. Kind of a Baroque method of painting. If you don't get it right and your paintings don't sell, then you definitely will be Baroque.
That's what they were.
Do you know what my favorite cookie is?
What?
The batter.
The batter.
I like cookies before they're cooked. Yeah, when I go to Papa Murphy's, I order the tub of cookie dough batter, and man, my fingers are just digging in there, like, if I'm coming from art class, I've got like, paint digging into the cookie dough, just like, my steering wheel's full of sticky.
Did your mom let you clean
No, I don't, but it's so, huh?
Did your mom used to have you clean out the cookie bowls
You know-
and mix them again?
My dad made the cookies,
Oh, did he?
because remember, he's a baker,
Oh,
and his bowls were,
yeah.
they were huge. And, when we were little, he'd hire me. I don't know, it was like slave labor. It's like my father had kids so that they could be dishwashers. And his bowls were so big that he would lift me up and put me inside, and I would stand there with bare feet scrubbing the inside of the bowls. And you're darn tootin'. Those cookie bowls that had the crust of all the chocolate chip in them, it's like, oh yeah, I was digging those off and eating them. I was even licking the bowl. good that we're not in business anymore and can't get the health department in to check on that. But I'd sit there and I'd lick that bowl. I was only 6. I know, it was great. They did everything to try to get me to go into the business. But anyway, here we have some interesting elements. I suppose those are your tubes of...
Tubes with cookies.
Yeah, so these are the tubes of cookies. And you squeeze them out, cut them out, put them on, let them bake. Those kids are all sitting there going, geez, other grandmas have their kids mix.
All the grandmas do that way now.
So anyway, so it feels a little bit like a Norman Rockwell sketch, you know. Usually when we're thinking about doing, and you're doing storytelling. So does this tell a story of kids anticipating cookies?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's successful.
And something, what do you think is the point of interest there?
The thing is, first thing what I do is I'm going to ask you, what do you think the center focal point
The
is?
spatula is,
And why do you think the spatula is?
because it shows up the most.
It is kind of showcased in the middle.
Right.
And you would be somewhat right if...
You think the woodwork on the background is behind the boy's head?
The faces, I think the faces.
So somebody said faces?
It's always
Yeah.
people, if there's people that are there.
Yeah. so
No,
it's-
they're not. A part of their anatomy is
Eyes.
eyes. We are like eyes. Yeah, I don't know if you have new Google stuff. It's like all of a sudden you show your picture, you take a picture of somebody and they throw those boxes up on things and say, who is this person? Who is this person? And you can have people that are just like in the parking lot way across the street, and Google will go, who's these people? You know, it's like they're so sensitive to that. I have a portrait done by one of my students of my dog, and last night my new puppy was barking. And I'm like going, why is he barking? And he's like sitting in the corner barking, and the room was fairly dark. And I was like, are we haunted? Because they say that dogs sense haunted things. You know, they can sense that there's something there. And I've been watching all the things on Science Station of, you know, poltergeists and stuff like that. And some of that stuff's really freaky. So I'm sitting there going, oh no, there's a ghost in this house. Not a bad thing if it's like a famous artist like Rembrandt, but not a good thing if it's like